It was a wild time down at Tassajara. I'm glad to be back dry, and everyone who wanted to stay stayed, and everyone who wanted to leave left. And for a while we were all down there together, and it was delicious and wonderful and wild. And so, and thank you to all of you, and to Marianne for holding the space and the forms. It was really nice to just feel the strength and the ground of everyone. So Zen forms. I listened to all of Marianne's talks, and they're wonderful. And usually in Zen, you don't tell people things. You just do it for a long time, and so it's kind of amazing now that we have a written record of all these different things to do. I learned it not because anybody told me to do it. I just learned it from doing it for about 15-20 years at Zen Center, and then my body knew how to do it. So so what I want to do the next couple of weeks at least, and I'm hoping Debbie is on a week from today is going to be able to, because Marianne and Debbie were both going to do this together, and then Debbie's been ill and is starting to feel a little better, but she thought maybe she could give a talk and do this on Tuesday. It'll be nice to hear her voice too as a long-term practitioner. I was thinking, we were outside doing walking meditation outside, and there's basketball in the court across the way, and I thought, well, there's a form there. They have a basketball form. They're all over there, and there's, I don't know, but clearly the coach is telling them something. Being down with the wildland firefighters at Tassajara, they have forms. I mean, and it sounds, I mean, if you're going out to meet the fire, they have really strict forms and training, because it would be really dangerous to send people out without really strict training about, you do this and you do that, and then you don't do this, and I mean, people die. The consequences could be and have been dire, and they know it. And then one of the things that we do, we did it with the vets too, is you would set up a form for the retreat, which has a different kind of intention. So you take, people were amazed. The firefighters are amazing people, and the degree and ability to drop down into compassion and wise seeing and relationship with each other, and forming a community that was kind and loving in a relatively short amount of time blew me away. And they were kind of blown away too, because they say when you're out on the line, when it's like, you got to buff it up, and you got to, I mean, that kind of training creates a certain kind of person or activity. It doesn't create the person, it creates a certain kind of activity or doing. But then you bring people down into Tassajara, and you take people into a retreat hall, and you introduce an altar, and then we would begin each session by one person would come up and light a candle. I always think, are they going to do this? And they actually do it. I mean, it's not only do they do it, then they start liking it as you light a candle. And then we have a book of, it's been created over the years, of poetry and sayings, or people can bring their own. And then it's each person individually, which is really scary. Some of you may have experienced that when you have to get up in front of everybody, but you light the candle, and then you read something that moves you, and you say why, And then you ring a bell and you bow. And when you do this over a series of days, something starts to happen and something starts to fall away and something starts to arise. It's a different kind of training. So then it does matter what your intention is. What are you training for? What is this training about? And Marianne, I thought, did a really beautiful job of telling about the forms and also transmitting the kind of heart behind it. And that's so important. So I wanted to continue with that. And I brought some different things that I've been kind of fishing around in. Maybe I'll start with, this is a book that I bought years ago called Zen Ritual, Studies of Zen Buddhist Theory and Practice. So I'm going to, it's brand new. Marianne in one of her talks said that she never tags her little books the way that I do, and I'm sort of messy. I love engaging fully with my books. This book has not been fully engaged with in any way, but I intend to. But I thought it would be interesting just to read the cover on the back as a way to for me to enter. When books on Zen Buddhism began to appear in Western languages just over a half a century ago, we're babies. This has been around forever and ever, but just over a half a century ago, when I started practicing, there wasn't anything to do but do it, or to try to figure out what this strange Asian thing was. But what attracted interest among Western readers was the Zen rejection of ritual. I mean, remember that? Remember Alan Watts and the beat poets? This was not because anybody wanted to sign up and do all of these strict Zen forms. It was, as it says, beat Zen writers were delighted by the Zen emphasis on spontaneity and wrote inspirationally about the demythologicalization and anti-ritualized spirit of Zen. Quotes from the great Zen masters supported this understanding of Zen and fed the excitement that surrounded the opening of Zen centers around the West. In other words, you were going to bust out of anybody telling you what to do, and it was going to be spontaneous and free. And Alan Watts, I don't think, probably, I don't know, but I don't think Alan Watts probably ever did a Zen service. He was like a Zen rogue. Zen people were wild. And then, once Western practitioners in these centers began seriously to engage with Zen, however, they discovered that Zazen, Zen meditation, is a ritualized practice surrounded by supporting practices that have been ritualized for centuries in East Asia. Despite initial tension with the anti-ritual image of ancient Zen masters, the realization grew that ritual is fundamental to the spirit of Zen. Later Zen practitioners would connect ritual to the idea of no mind, or the open and awakened state of mind in which ingrained habits of thinking were given way to more receptive, direct forms of experience. And ritual came to be understood as a vehicle rather than an obstacle to spiritual awakening. Now, depending on when you came or what your proclivity is, I mostly came, I think, because of wild Zen. I mean, I wasn't very wild, mind you, but I didn't come and sign up for all these forms. And it was a bit of a shock of what are all these people doing? And not only that, when you go to Zen centers that have been established for a while, it looks pretty serious, these forms. And I didn't think that's what I had signed up for. And people still wander into Zen centers. And one of the first questions always is, so what's with all the rituals and the chanting? So what's with all the rituals and the chanting? Marianne, I think from the beginning, because of who she was, loved the forms. And she transmits that in a really beautiful way. Because of who I am, sorry guys, it's like, I don't think so. That's not why I came here. I came here to garden and to live in community and to maybe sit some zazen, but a lot of it for me was in the beginning of sort of the price of admittance. It's like whatever was happening here, it looked good. I wanted a piece of it. And if this is what you told me I had to do to belong to the club, then I was going to do it. Maybe some of you have a little of that too. Okay, okay. If the community's nice, the teachings are helpful, and every now and then we have to do these vows or chants, or I don't know what goes on in each one of you, but I really want to create a full possibility of that wherever you are in all of this, it's not aberrant. You're not the first one who ever experienced this. And then along the way, something happens. And suddenly you sit down for a period of zazen and the form holds you. And it's the most beautiful thing that ever happened, but it doesn't make any sense with the conscious mind. Or you're doing service and suddenly, like for me, doing a full bow for me is one of the most beautiful things on earth, that you just get to put your whole body down on the ground and not hold back. Something along the way starts to connect, maybe a chant or a word or bell. I remember. I remember being at Zen Center as a young student, and there was a tragedy in the world, and we did a service, and I must not have been that new because I was doing the bells, but I remember I had the experience of the first time of hitting the bell, and it wasn't me hitting the bell. It was like I was hitting the bell with the grief and love of the whole world, and it changed everything. It wasn't just this hit the bell now. It was something happened in the dance of service that allowed all of us who were in the Zendo at Green Gulch to respond to the suffering of the world through the service to express it. And I think ultimately that is what these forms do. It's a way to hold the love and express the love, and hold and express the suffering and the beauty with our bodies, because this is an embodied practice. So I wanted to, I brought with me Norman Fisher and Sue Moon's What is Zen? It's a great little book. I would highly recommend it. And I thought that I might share a little of what they have to say about this. In most Soto Zen practice places, you will find two kinds of rituals. First is basic Zen etiquette. You'll probably be shown a way to enter the meditation hall and all of the things, and many of the things Marianne was introducing, and that we actually, we took the Wildland Firefighters into the Zendo, and maybe one of the more obscure things is that when you enter a Zendo, you enter with the foot that's the closest to the door sill as you go in, and then everybody wants to do it. It's like it's like this game or something that everybody walks in, and then we got into the Zendo, which is so alien. I mean, nobody had ever been into a Zendo before, and we started. We chanted the Metta Sutta, and one of the firefighters had been a Zen student, and so he could hit the bells. And then we said, "Do you want to try to hit the bells?" And everybody, they stood in line to try to hit the bells. I mean, how do you make any sense out of this? But there's some kind of beauty that you feel when you walk into a space that has deep intention, that is catching. You'll be instructed about the various bells that will be sounding to begin and end periods of meditation. And then there are formal interviews with the teacher, and you will be given instructions in this practice too. The details about all these things can seem elaborate when you first hear about them. But once you do them for a while, you realize that actually they are simple and natural. It just is a training in a simple and natural way to allow your body to be in relationship with other bodies and to create sounds that you realize that they actually are simple and natural and provide a way for everyone to comport themselves with a sense of calm and mutual respect. Like, oh, I can enter this beautiful kind of dance, and it doesn't take anything special. But if you want to learn the dance more fully, then you can pay attention to where your foot is, or you can pay attention to how you hold your hands. And the thing is that you can do this forever. It's like you're not ever going to get it down and get it right or wrong. It more and more springs from the inside because it's a beautiful act of devotion. The strong feeling in Zen meditation halls is in no small part due to the care that everyone takes in these basic rituals. What's the meaning of the service? What's the meaning of the service? Do you know the answer now? You know, anyway, we'll see what it says here. The simplest answer is that we inherited this from people who transmitted it to us, and out of respect for them, we continue this. We do prostrations to cultivate humility and devotion. We chant, we do dedication of merit. It's all gratitude and devotion and humility and concern for others. Once you get over your theoretical antipathy to it. But all of this is rational defense of ritual. Then there are the less rational defenses, that ritual has power we can't account for. Something happens that's more than the sum of the parts. A power we can't make reasonable sense of. I don't completely discount this possibility given the enormous emphasis on ritual in virtually all ancient cultures. Possibly not all of our ancestors were deluded. There is a power to ritual, and we enact it together. It was beautiful in the roaring of the river at Tassajara. I mean, it was just, you'd go to sleep to it, you'd wake up to it. Actually, you'd wake up in the morning and you check the ground to make sure that it hadn't flooded and that you weren't gonna, that the creek wasn't rising and hadn't invaded the room that you were staying in. But that was just part of it. But it was just this amazing sound of rushing water all the time. And in the midst of it, the schedule continues, and you hear the bells and you hear the drum. And because you've done it in your own body, you know exactly what they're doing. And your body's responding to it, even though you're walking along the road in Tassajara, wondering when a rock is going to roll off the hill because the hills are all slippery. But then there's something, it's like the drumbeat goes on and the bell goes on, and you just keep the pulse of the valley, the pulse of service is the pulse of your own heart and the pulse of everyone else there. Something holds you. It's very beautiful to experience. And the meals go on, and the bells for the meals, and all of the gongs, and you have no idea this atmospheric river is going overhead, and it's coming down, and it's drowning everybody, and in the midst of it you hear bong. It's like, it's okay, and pay attention, the power to it. Why do we put so much emphasis on doing everything a certain way? What difference does it really make whether we sit in Zazen with your right or left hand on top? Because Zazen really is the source of all of this. It's the ritual that's the heart of all of it. Whether you rest your spoon in your first or second bowl during a formal oryoki meal, you guys don't even know the beginning of the forms that you can do. Oryoki is pretty amazing. Isn't Zen kind of obsessive compulsive? Now, I think that's a very good question, because I personally do think that different traditions attract different kinds of people. And I think one kind of person that comes to Zen can be a little obsessive compulsive. But it's a really good thing to do with it. But then it also attracts lots of other kinds of us too. But so I think that's a good question. Let me answer it. Maybe Zen can be a bit obsessive. I've been in situations where anybody else here can look, especially if you've been in a formal Zen center. I like to soften that and foster a relaxed feeling about how we do the forms, maybe even simplify, which we do here. After all, the forms are to facilitate practice and transformation. They are not external rules. But there is a point to doing things a certain way. In fact, one always does things a certain way. There is never no way. We are doing rituals all the time, everywhere. You get out of bed in a certain kind of way. I mean, if you start noticing brushing your teeth, I mean, from the minute you get out of bed, so then how do you turn it into a ritual of transformation and freedom of being awake, as opposed to, it seems to me the intention in a ritual that changes it from the forms of basketball or fighting fires, or which are all important, is there's something inherent where you want to wake up. You want to be awake in this life, and you want to use the forms and rituals as a way to help embody and live that deepest intention. So then you can do it anywhere. You can do it with everything. You don't have to do these forms to do that, but these forms teach us that. There is always a degree of flexibility and creativity in how you interpret or apply the way you do things. In music, there are scales to learn and practice, very rigid. Why not just pick up the horn and toot in the way you feel like tooting? But no, there won't be music that way, or anyway, there won't be Beethoven or Verdi. It would be Stephen Curry, unless you get really in the center of the forms and play it with great heart. My sense is there's something when you watch an athlete or a dancer that's dancing, playing from the inside out, that is transformative. There's nothing absolute about any of this. Zen forms make sense. They have a feeling, an integrity, a history, a depth. They facilitate spiritual development in certain directions. But yes, it's also very important not to get stuck on them, that they become counterproductive, which can happen. What would counterproductive look like? It would look like a very uptight, crabby Zen practitioner, constantly complaining about everyone not doing it right, and closed off to his or her own joy and creativity by a slavish attachment to forms. And again, I thought Marianne did a really beautiful job of transmitting the spirit of all of this. So now I want to share one more thing. Suzuki Roshi, because I went to Suzuki Roshi and thought, oh, what does Suzuki Roshi have to say about forms that we can bring here? And I found different things, but I want to share, mostly I want to share the Zen story. I love these Zen stories because they do get in like the forms, and they're really, really helpful. They have the same power of a bell just going bong in the midst of a storm. Okay. In our scriptures, the Samutagama Sutra, volume 33, it is said that there are 4 kinds of horses. Do you know this story? Do any of you know this story? I love this story. This is a good story. Excellent ones, good ones, poor ones, and bad ones. The best horse will run slow and fast, right and left at the driver's will before it sees the shadow of the whip. Probably think that's what you want to be, right? You probably think you're not. And then you're self-critical. And then you might say that to somebody else because they're not doing it right, or anyway, it goes on and on. The second best will run as well as the first one does just before the whip reaches its skin. The third one will run when it feels pain on its body. And the fourth will run after the pain penetrates to the marrow of its bones. You can imagine how difficult it is for the fourth one to learn how to run. When we hear this story, almost all of us want to be the best horse, right? I mean, that would be nice, huh? If it is impossible to be the best one, we want to be the second best. That is, I think, the usual understanding of this story and of Zen. You may think that when you sit in Zazen, you will find out whether you are one of the best horses or the worst ones. When you do service, are you the best chanter or the worst chanter? When you get a chance to do the bells, did you do the best bells? Who didn't do the best bells? This is what we do, right? I mean, if we're honest, I do anyway, or I catch myself more. Here, however, this is a misunderstanding of Zen. If you think the aim of Zen practice is to train you to become one of the best horses, you have a big problem. This is not the right understanding. If you practice Zen in the right way, it does not matter whether you are the best horse or the worst one. When you consider the mercy of Buddha, how do you think Buddha will feel about the four kinds of horses? He will have more sympathy for the worst one than for the best one. It's so beautiful when someone you just say, would you hit the bells? And someone goes, okay. And then they just go and they just do the bells as best they can. And you just chant the best you can. And you sit down and you do Zazen. And you're squirmy and you're wiggly and your posture is terrible. It's like that's who Buddha loves the most, for goodness sakes, the amount of effort and intention to be here and to do that. When you are determined to practice Zazen with the great mind of Buddha, you will find the worst horse is the most valuable one. In your very imperfections, you will find the basis for your firm, way-seeking mind. Those who can sit perfectly physically usually take more time to obtain the true way of Zen, the actual feeling of Zen, the marrow of Zen. But those who find great difficulties in practicing Zen or doing service or loving the forms or any of it, one of them, will find more meaning in it. So I think that sometimes the best horse may be the worst horse, and the worst horse may be the best one. Suzuki Roshi's teacher used to call him Crooked Cucumber. And he said that Suzuki Roshi said he was the only one who stayed because he was dumb enough to stay. All the good students ran away because the situation wasn't so easy. So don't set yourself up here. Worst horse, best horse. When we talk about Zen, we cannot say she is good or she is bad in the ordinary sense of the word. When you arouse your real way-seeking mind, you can practice Zen in its true sense. Actually, it is easier for those who have difficulties in sitting and service and practice to arouse the true way-seeking mind than for those who can sit easily. Okay, did I succeed in letting you all know that you're welcome here just exactly the way you are, and there's no standard to set yourself up against? And there's beautiful standards, and it's beautiful to hit the bell. The bell that is well hit is it's just like one of the most beautiful things in the world. And I'll tell you that each one of those firefighters, when they went up and they hit that bell in the Zendo, because they were so into it, it was one of the most beautiful things in the whole world. And it didn't have anything to do with hitting it right. It was just because they wanted to express themselves through the bell. So. Okay, I think what I'm gonna do is instead of breaking us into groups, because there's one more thing I want to say in this Suzuki Roshi thing. I don't want to ignore it. And then we'll have a discussion because I want to hear what you've been learning or doing. Dogen Zenji said, now you know when Dogen Zenji says something. This is the standard of Zen. Okay, so are you ready? You gonna take this one in? Is the best horse, the worst horse, or anybody in between? Shoshaku Jushuku. Shaku generally means mistake or wrong. Shoaku Jushaku means to succeed wrong with wrong, or one continuous mistake. According to Dogen, one continuous mistake can also be Zen. A Zen master's life, a Zen practitioner's life, could be said to be so many years of one continuous mistake. This means so many years of one single-minded effort. Life is one continuous mistake with a single-minded effort. You just show up. You just show up over and over, and you just bow, and you just hit the bell, and you just chant, and you just sit down, and you squirm, and you wiggle, and sometimes Zazen is sublime, and sometimes it's not. But you just keep doing it. It's all repetition, waking up in the midst of the repetition of just putting one foot in front of the other. And what an amazing thing to get to do, to put your hands together and to bow and to set up the altar and take it down. But don't ever forget, it's one continuous mistake. That's all. You just keep doing it. So good horse, bad horse. Okay. So now I'm curious to hear from all of you. What have you been learning? What have you been unlearning? What